This is Chapter 6, Security Technology, Access Controls, Firewalls, and VPNs. Let's see if this works. Let's try to set the focus to it. There you go. Our learning objectives. Upon completion of this material, you should be able to discuss the role of access control in information systems, identify and discuss four fundamental functions of access control systems, define authentication, explain the three commonly used authentication factors, describe firewall technologies and the various categories of firewalls. Discuss the various approaches to firewall implementation, identify the various approaches to control remote and dial-up access by authenticating and authorizing users, describe VPNs, discuss technology. Introduction. Technical controls are essential in enforcing policy for many IT functions and under direct human control. Technical control solutions, when properly implemented, improve an organization's ability to balance objectives of making information readily available and preserving the information's confidentiality and integrity. You try to use tools to help you control it so that you don't have to sit there and manually monitor a person. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Access control, selective method by which systems specify who may use a particular resource and how may they use it. We've got a color printer. Do you want everybody to print to it? What? Yeah, run out of ink. How much does it cost per page, do you think, for color copying?
30 cents.
50 cents. 50 cents per page. If you do it externally. Now, internally is cheaper. Yeah, I went to the festival here in Wellington this last weekend, and I came up with a flyer for the program and so forth. And I thought, well, I want this to be in color. I want it to look nice. I'll spend my own money. And I was thinking 20 cents per page. And so then I called the copy place and said it's 50 cents per page. And I was going to make 100 copies. And I was willing to put out $20 for color. But at 50 cents per page came out to $50. It's like, well, I'm not doing that. So I was kind of black and white pages on Saturday. They restricted down. They don't allow anybody to print to the color printers, copiers we have here. Access need to control it. They saved a huge amount of money by allowing us to not print in color anymore. Mandatory access controls, MAC, MAC, required structured data classification scheme to raise each collection of information of each user. Discretionary access controls, DAC, access controls that are implemented at the discretion or option of the data user. And non-discretionary controls, access controls are implemented by central authority. In general, all access control approaches rely on the following four mechanisms. Identification. I'm a user of the system. So you're trying to identify who it is. Authentication. I can prove I'm a user of the system. Authorization. Here's what I can do with the system. And accountability. Track and monitor use of the system. Some of this is just from a signing in standpoint. Some of it may be from the computer side, where it's checking if you have the rights. You got your access controls, non-discretionary, controlled by organization. You got your discretionary, controlled by user. Identification. The access control mechanism that requires the validation and verification of the unauthenticated entity's reported identity. Identifiers can be composite identifiers, concatenated elements, department codes, random numbers, or special characters to make them unique. Most organizations use a single piece of unique information, such as the complete name or user first initial and surname. What do you use here at Cali for students?
Last name, first initial, and then Your ID number.
An ID number? Okay.
First,
From a instructor standpoint, they, how we identify ourselves with our first name, last name. We used to have that. Mine was Hayes D, and then it was a 6-digit number. I'm assuming it's my ID number of some sort. Why don't they use that for everybody then?
because there's like my name, there's multiple John Stouts.
Yeah. So you have issues there. You can put 1s and 2s on the end of it, but they figure it's unique if you use your last name, first initial, and then your code. Why not just use your student ID number?
That should be hard to find in the system. It'd be hard if someone doesn't know your ID number to find
SQL, you can query about anything. So.
But if you have to, another student has to email you for a project, and they don't know your ID number, it's gonna be hard for you to find them.
Yeah, you can still do your mapping, so that is ways around that. It's kind of a personal, I mean, there might be other reasons, but there's a personal reason. I say, okay, John, you're 571342 Cal. John just what is just a number. So they throw your name on there and your first letter for that reason. I've worked at other colleges where they just use the number. But it's kind of a weird feeling when you just input the number, because it does feel like a loss of.
Feels like prison.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's your prisoner number.
I mean, can't you argue that with the Social Security? Give you a Social Security number.
That's you can't get that out.
Yeah.
What's the point of Social Security? I don't understand.
It's not supposed to be an ID. It's not supposed to be a national ID card. It's not supposed to be.
Well, no, but there's
wasn't meant to originally.
No. Wasn't meant to originally. What they need to do is have either. What Germany does is have a national ID card separate from your driver's license. That actually has a photo of you on it. That way, you have to update it every so often with an updated photo.
Yeah.
Instead of using Social Security, which will use you to steal your identity.
That's true. There's issues with it. So if you're designing a new system, these things you have to keep in mind, right? Why not use a number? Again, people feel like a number. And you go to a smaller community college, so you don't feel like a number, right?
Oh, you're locked out, son.
What?
You're locked out.
Oh. Authentication. The access control mechanism requires validation, verification of unauthenticated entities' purported identity. Authentication factor, something you know, password, passphrase. All seems kind of obvious, right? We sign you up, Callie, you give your user ID. You authenticate yourself by entering in your password. Other ways, something you have, dumb card, ID or ATM card with magnetic stripe. So that identifies who you are. That way, they can't hack in and steal your password. They have to steal what?
Your access.
Wallet, purse, your whatever. So wherever you have the little card, right? Now ATMs have something additional. What do they have? In theory. When you go use your ATM, you have to have your card, right? What else do you usually have to have?
Your PIN number?
PIN number. Is that always true though?
No, it's
No. So it's just like,
stored if it's under a certain amount, you don't have to enter your PIN number or sign.
right, it defeats the purpose of having the dual, verification, where you have your card and you have a password. But
Or you
anyway.
have to sign.
The what?
Or you have to sign.
Yeah. Yeah, but then they'll verify the signature against anything. So.
I would know.
So it's just like a signature is like the stupidest thing ever when they ask me to sign. It's just like, well, you don't verify this is truly my signature.
Well, for a good 2 months, I got reissued a card because my previous card quit working, they issued it with my dad's name on it instead of mine. And for 2 months, I went to multiple restaurants, and they had me. I signed my regular name, and they never checked it.
Yeah.
Until then I was like, I probably should go change this.
My brother-in-law passed away last December, I guess it was, and he had been dying for a while. And the family members, when they need to do business with Social Security or whatever, you're not supposed to be able to call and do business for somebody else. Well, we had his Social Security number, we had all his information. So what do you think we would do when we called?
You do business for him.
We would pretend we're that person. Hey, I'm Clay. Here's my Social Security number. Blah blah blah. Yeah, if you have the information, there's no voice verification. There's no biometrics at all, is there?
You should incorporate that sometime soon. Recently from your finger.
That's it. Yeah, because if you have all that information, you can call up. They'll deal with you. Of course, in his case, he was in a assisted or long-term care facility, so he wasn't even able to call up or anything. Let's see. Smart cards. I don't understand that, but I haven't read enough about it.
I think it's the way. I think it's like the new chips on the.
Is that? But what I mean, what's the purpose? Is it so they can't like copy your card easily?
It's like it's supposed to be more secure, and we're like 10 years behind Europe and that kind of security.
Well, as I understand, there's devices where I can walk by you, and if you have one of those old cards, it will just by walking by you, I can gather your information.
And that's why that's why my backpack and my wallet each have something to block that.
Yeah. But see, then the question is, I can steal that information, but I still don't have the extra card, so can they easily create a card based on that information? I don't know.
Either that or just go online.
Or go online. Synchronous tokens, asynchronous tokens, something you are. Relies upon individual characteristics. He goes in, and he's obviously not his father. So if it looked up the age, the person's supposed to be 40 or 50, however old your dad is, it looks right.
Look up the class name, see what's on the account.
Yeah.
My name's also on the account, so.
And strong authentication. Authorization. The access control mechanism that represents the matching of an authenticated entity to a list of information assets and corresponding access levels. I gave you the example working on the base. When you get on the base and they give you a security, it's not to every building. They got it restricted down to buildings. Same idea with the network, with any kind of computer system. I can sign in, but I can't see payroll information. At one point in time with this new system, we could sign in as you. It was our way to look up your phone number, your address, so that if John could come into class, Tess could come into class, I could call him and say, hey, where are you at? I have no way to look at your phone number now. They took that away. Why do you think they took that away?
Because the code can be abused.
Could be abused, yeah. Because I'm signing in as you, aren't I? And so
whole money involved in signing in, basically teaching us to give you the answers to the tests. Because you can also act.
Well, this is only instructors could do it. Like I could sign in as John into the Genza bar, and there's a privacy issue there. If I don't have a legitimate reason, you guys, my students, have legitimate reason for looking up your address and phone number. Address might be kind of iffy, right?
Yeah.
You come into my house? But I have a legitimate reason to look up your phone number, your email address, so I can contact you. Does the janitor, the maintenance person, have a legitimate reason to look up your information? No.
Maybe they jammed down because of the accident in the room and they wanted to take care of personally.
Well, if there's any kind of action like that, security is supposed to handle it at the college. That's why they have those little.
I'm not saying like a mess, like someone like threw up or something. Spilled
We
a
have to-
bunch of
We have to find the culprit. Who did this?
Track them down, yeah.
No.
Yeah, you don't know who's all working at a college, do you? So that's why they took it away. I think there is a way we can look it up through the retention module. And who has access to the retention module? Would a maintenance person have access? Retention is like alerts that you're doing bad and sent to advisors and coaches.
no, sure.
No, only people have access is legitimate people. So I never have bothered to figure out how to do it though. It's not easy where you can just put in a name and see the information. You have to like set up an alert. Okay. Authorization can be handled one of three ways. Authorization for each authenticated user, for members of the group, across multiple systems. What does Linux have? Ubuntu or any of those? They got 3 levels. They might have more than that. There's 3 that come default with the operating system.
I'm not on it right now, so I can't check.
It's your user, this person is signed in, that's one. Group, and I'm not trying, it's been a while since I worked for Linux, so I don't remember exactly the group, but you can be members of different groups, that's where you can kind of break it down. And then the world, so they have 3 levels. Like if you do a change mod at 755, each one of those numbers represents the different parts. Authorization credentials are called authorization tickets issued by Authenticator and honored by many or all systems within the authenticated domain. You've heard of Active Directory and different items like that. That allows you to kind of coordinate everything. So everything's talking together, say, okay, yeah, David signed in here is truly the David, and it's all seamless in theory. The single sign-on. What's that supposed to do?
It's supposed to allow us to go to everything on our account.
Right.
Without having to sign in.
Exactly. So those are supposed to talk smoothly back and forth, right?
Well, it didn't work for me today.
Yeah. Yeah. The authorization has some issues here. Accountability. The access control mechanism ensures all actions on a system, authorized or unauthorized, can be attributed to an authenticated identity, also known as auditability. Means the system logs, database journals, auditing these records. System logs record specific information. Logs have many uses. What would you use a log for?
So you know, like, how many times you have entered it, like the profile? Just to keep track of whatever it may be used for.
Xeris, said it right, didn't it? Okay. Xeris breaks in to the computer system, and he changes grades. And he says, I wasn't even here. David's all wrong.
They can just check the
Check the IP address.
Yeah, because it's legal with an IP and
Everything's logged, isn't it? Yeah. We look in the logs, and his ISP. You look at the college if necessary, and we see that he's right. He didn't do it. So yeah, logs are critical. When you got any kind of issue happen, then you can see what's going on. Sometimes you'll see who's just logged in during that time, and then it'll contact you and say, hey, did you do anything weird or so, they'll ask strange questions. Because if they give you too much information, is that good? No, because then you can kind of cover yourself, right? So you don't really say what happened. Assuming they're a guilty person.
This is like they'll ask you where were you at this
Very generic questions, because you have to get detailed. It's just like, were you on such and such server at 10 p.m. on that night? Then you know what they're referring to if you're guilty.
So you're being asked questions, you probably know what they're referring to, what they're guilty of.
Depends. If you broke into multiple places in the college, you may not know, like if you did it over time, you may not know the exact details. Biometrics. What's biometrics?
Using YLG for security.
Yeah.
Like the old, like the single back in my phone.
Yeah.
Facial recognition.
Still work very good?
Still getting full. Like the photo, like facial recognition on here, all you can pull up a photo of the person and you can get in.
Yeah.
Really? I never tried that. The technology is not really there unless we're just using cheap technology. The MacBooks, they have that fingerprint. You know what I'm talking about?
I got one.
You got one of those? Yeah. I don't know if my fingers are just real. Maybe I should wash my hands more. It doesn't work very well on my fingerprint. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe it works about 25% of the time. On Windows 10, I set up the facial recognition. I don't think I ever got it to work.
The worst, but
I wonder if it's something related to that. It's just like, well, this is crap. Why you put this on here if it doesn't work at all? So now I got a PIN number on it too. So talks about evaluating false reject rate, false accept rate, crossover error rate. Highly reliable, effective biometric systems are often considered intrusive by users. Give some blood. Do you think there is one where you might have to give blood?
Maybe
One day. Military, maybe, yeah. I would hope. I'm going into the part that controls the nuclear weapons of the country. That I have to give a sample of my blood, and I have to do the eye thing. I have to remember a 50 character password.
For the longest time, the actual password was like a single string of numbers, like all the same number, like 0, 0, 0.
Oh, really?
It was like good
for the nuclear.
Yeah.
How do you think they? And I read this a couple of years ago, and I'm sure they probably haven't redone it yet. What do you think the nuclear power? The nuclear weapons run off of? What kind of system? Like a DVD, SS. What?
It's so floppy.
It's floppy. Yeah. I was reading something saying, "Oh my God, those things bail right and left," and it's just like here we found our nuclear system based on that. Some of you have written programs. Has your programs always worked the first time?
No.
No. What happens if you rewrite something that important and it doesn't work the first time? You're bombing London?
bombing Japan for a third time.
Yeah, bombing for a third time. Yes, just keeps on bombing and sending nuclear weapons over there. So they got something that works, even though it's technology that's about 30 years old. They're hesitant to change it.
Yeah.
Plus, some of those old ways you can't necessarily hack into, right? Well, we run this program off the network, and then we can hack in the network, change the program, so forth. We run this program off of our floppies, 5 1/4. Can you hack into that? No, there's no way. So, you're just talking about the. Probably if I really read up on the facial recognition, I'd realize why it doesn't recognize me. Do they use this in other areas besides signing into systems? I find it really interesting. They'll use this facial recognition in certain security checkpoints. So when you walk through, it does a facial recognition and looks for certain people. The military probably use that at some of those checkpoints. You got somebody leaving an area and they're putting on some kind of disguise. How do you identify it? You'd have to have your personnel with what, sheets of papers going like that, looking through. You look like that person. That's not very efficient, is it? I'm trying to think what kind of. I think I had to show my permit for getting on the base. They give you a paper that you had to put in your window or off the. I don't even remember now. It's been a while. Also had to show my driver's license. Could both of those be falsified? Yeah. Then they went to a scanning device, so they'd scan it. Well, the scanning's better, isn't it? Because it can look you up in a database, see if you ever tested positive for explosives. You're not coming on the base. So who knows where they're headed with that?
They did some similar stuff at the LaGuardia Airport in New York. Whenever I went, they had you step in this machine and they scan you all around, and then they take your passport and enter it into the database. It's a ridiculous process.
Oh, it's not about Israel's process.
Yeah, that's true.
They have to make you go through an interview, and they also give you a number, and that number, like if you're determines how much level of security you gotta go through.
Of course, they got the best military security in the world, so they have to. They're like under constant attack. So.
Well,
yeah. You don't even hear about it a lot. They don't really post it. But if you go, I like to go to a lot of different countries, news agencies, and read about it. And there's a lot of attacks that occur on Israel. But you never see one word of it in the news.
Do they even allow TSA pre-check? You can't just.
I would be shocked.
Yeah.
It's the stupidest thing in the world. Because when I was flying, when I first went out, I had to take my shoes off, I had to do this and that. Come back from Columbus, Ohio. Somehow I was on the list where they never checked me at all. And I'm sitting here, I never paid for this. I never did anything different. Just somehow they flagged me. Maybe because I didn't have a turban on my head and my skin wasn't a certain color.
Oh, that's terrible.
I don't know. Maybe they figure a fat old white guy from Kansas isn't a terrorist. I don't know.
Yeah, ever since New York, I've always fly the TSA pre-check. That was a rigorous process.
Yeah, I don't know how I even got flagged where I didn't have to be checked. You know, I had my shoes off, I had my belt off, and I'm walking up there, and I said, "Oh, you're in the we don't check you."
Yeah.
Plane. You mean you let people on the plane? You don't even check? Well, that's comforting.
well, the TSA doesn't really do much.
But but it's at least it makes me feel good to think that you're checking.
Yeah, it makes you feel good, but here's the thing: most of the actual work is done by intelligence agencies, not TSA.
Right.
It's complicated stuff.
They'll have this technology 10 years down the road where everybody walking on a plane, your face will automatically be scanned, and they'll know exactly who you are and so forth. Identical twins, yeah. Here's our ranking of biometric effective. That's not very exciting. Talks about age, medium, and low. I suppose odor. Yeah, that's David. That's interesting. I don't think I ever heard about the odor one. Do people have different odors?
Yeah.
No.
They have different scents.
You smell like a terrorist.
They smell like a filthy commie. Maybe the mask not be definite odor.
Access control architecture models illustrate the access control implementations can help organizations quickly make improvements to adaptation. Trusted computing based TCB, ITSec, an international set of criteria for evaluating computer systems. The idea is when you're coming up with one of these models, you try to use one that's already been established, that other people are using, that it works, instead of trying to come up with your own. And it talks about all these models. Firewalls. In information security, a combination of hardware and software that filters and prevents specific information from moving between the outside, untrusted network and the inside, trusted network. And we've talked about firewalls before. Maybe separate computer system, software service running on existing router or server, separate network containing supporting devices. There's probably ideas for either one. If you have it on separate hardware, then they don't even get access. We talked about that. You block them right there. If it's software running on your existing server, they're already into your server, aren't they? So, potentially, could they do some damage? So that's why they have different ideas on that. Probably depending upon your level of security you want, is which one you choose. How about separate network containing supporting devices? What would be a benefit of that? Who should get into our, this is an issue with design. Who should get into our website?
Students and faculty.
And who else?
Potential students.
Potential students? Everybody, right?
Yeah.
We want it open to everybody. If you have static pages out there, no problem, right? They hack in, they can just get into it. How about the databases that your website may access?
Well, important people should have that on their staff and faculty.
Yeah.
And
But when you put it on the website, what does that potentially open up? That the world can
look at your database.
get into your databases, yeah. I don't think we use any databases at all here at Cali. I might be surprised. But I don't think we do. Oh no, I lie. We do use a database, but I'm not sure if it actually goes to our network database or not. Because they implemented something recently. If I go to Butler, I'm not sure what they have, to be honest. They used to use Cold Fusion. And so like if I went to course catalog, let's see if they these look like static web pages that said .html. If I go to Cali, if I look at our catalog, what does that say up at the top? PHP? Yeah. That means it's accessing a database. So it's not static pages. So that when somebody changes it in the database, it's automatically changed on the fly here. Now, I think this is actually done through Genzabar, which is the main system, one you use for your adding classes and so forth. So again, how do you do that? If you got static web pages, you put your web server outside of your organization. So it may have its own firewall, but then if they break in through that, then they don't have access to everything else. So you put it inside your organization. Firewalls, processing modes. Processing mode by which firewalls can be categorized, packet filtering. Application layer proxy, MAC layer firewalls, hybrids. Mac stands for different things in computers. I don't even know if I know how to look it up. Let's see if I Google it. Look up Windows 10. Quickest way to find a MAC address is the command prompt. Do ipconfig/all. Okay, so I come down here, type cmd, ipconfig/all. Somewhere in here you'll find your MAC address. I think it's this physical address here. Network connections, view network connections. Okay, ipconfig all. Yeah, physical address. So again, the MAC address here refers to this code. Is yours the same as mine? It's not supposed to be. Yeah, if it is, then that means something funny's going on. So they again try to put some kind of identifier on here that, in theory, you can't change to help identify, people are doing stuff. All of this is based upon access controls and so forth, and logging and I think it was Ponca City at one point in time was talking about having free Wi-Fi for the entire town.
Yeah, I remember that.
Stupidest thing ever.
What's your Facebook?
What?
What's your Facebook?
Why is it the stupidest thing ever?
Because most people already have access.
Most of the people there sell all their stuff for drugs.
Maybe it's a smart idea then. No offense if you live in Ponca City.
I did live.
Yeah. If I'm going to surf child porn, if I'm going to hack into FBI, if I'm going to go to ISIS related sites,
We have quite a few.
yeah, I'm busy. What time do I go to? Ponca City, yeah, it's a free and open. It's just like there's no tracking. You go to, now you may say, well, I can go to McDonald's and do the same thing. They monitor, don't they? Yes. Some places have actual physical cameras that'll monitor you. Some have devices. Because they don't want to get the FBI coming into their establishment, asking a lot of questions and so forth. So maybe Ponca City was planning on implementing it in a controlled way. I don't know. Some MAC addresses. Anybody know if they ever implemented?
They were still talking about it whenever I moved out.
Okay.
They were still hosting they had a voting deal on it, but it was a good idea. They had a bunch of council meetings. I didn't know if they wanted to. They did.
Really, they haven't. Maybe is there any kind of identification, or is it just like free whatever scoop whatever you want?
Well, now you know where Professor Ace is going out.
Yeah, you don't do bad things on your own system, do you?
Yes, that's why you have VPN.
Callie used to have a lot of trouble on that. Even virtual machines just be tracked back to your location.
Yes, that's why I always say no. It's like, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, just track my virtual machine.
No, track virtual, yeah. You think you're not being tracked, but you are. But then people will do it from your machine. They used to send spam. They still do it once in a while, I think. Our server would become really slow certain times of the day for no apparent reason. It'd be like nobody on type of deal. And they would hack into ours and it'd send spam from our address. Why is that?
Make it like you.
Make it look like it's coming from Cali, so that if you get somebody stops you from being able to email. AOL blacklisted us at one point in time, said we couldn't email AOL addresses anymore because we're spammers. And you don't want to do it from your own site, and you can probably go over to Russia and so forth. But what have a lot of places done with blocking in terms of IP addresses for Russia? They've identified the ones used for spam, and they've blocked that entire range of IP addresses, so you can't have anything come in from there. So yeah, it may sound like a good idea to
Go to your website.
What?
It's just like on the cheat sheet I used for when we do the HTML tutorials, was like a whole deal and like block as it shows how to block an
Oh, does it show you how to block it? I never have actually blocked it in the hardware or software side. Or ready to do it. Someday we'll have equipment here and I'll be able to actually do it in real life. They got the shelving ordered. So. Let's see. Simple firewall models enforce rules designed to prohibit packets with certain addresses and partial addresses from passing through the device. You got 3 subsets of packet filtering firewall: static filtering, dynamic filtering, stateful packet inspection. SPI firewalls keep track of each network connection between internal and external systems using a state table. This is a IP packet structure. You got your header version up here, header link, type of service, identification, fragment offset, time to live, protocol, all of these things. Your packet, remember your information is sent like a video, is broken into little pieces of information. And it's sent separately. This up here tells it about that piece of information. You know, what's it part of? Because when you receive it on the other end, how does it know how to organize it? You know, type of deal. See, fragment offset. I couldn't tell you what all these are in detail, but I know just generally what that top refers to. It says source IP address, destination. Why is that important?
So you know where it came from?
Where you came from and where it's going to, right? So that your hardware devices can route that, hardware/software can route that to the appropriate destination. Could you put something on the network and see something that's coming from a specific IP address? Yeah. Question is how to get that IP address. But if I plugged in a network sniffer into the little ports here in the wall, wherever they're at, it would watch everything going across. That's a lot of information. Have you ever looked at the results of the network sniffer?
Buy ones plug it in and it gets over Wi-Fi.
Yeah. There's other devices too that don't. You don't even have to be a device. There's software that does it. A lot of information goes across. So if you try and narrow down, I just want to look at JC's information going across. I need to know his IP address, and then I could narrow it down. How about if there is no source IP address? It's blank. Or it doesn't follow a correct form. What do you think that means?
It's fake.
It's fake. So what should a good hardware software solution do?
Just make sure that IP is never, that IP address is never sent anything to or
Could be. Maybe you put on the list so you don't allow them access. Or it could be that you send a message back saying, hey, it got screwed up in the process. You know, you had a little electrical surge, when you're trying to do it, it sends through some bogus stuff. And sometimes it does that. It sends it back to the source and says, hey, I don't understand what you just sent me. And then it resends it. But yeah, sometimes it's just people are trying to screw with it. So you have to go with some destination IP address when they didn't really even request it. TCP packet structure. Yeah, same type of information. Just try to control access. UDP diagram structure. Packet filtering router. Here's your untrusted network. Block data packets for whatever reason. They circle around. They may be discarded or they may be sent back to where they came from so they can try again. You ever get a download that just didn't work? Then you requested it again?
Yeah.
Multiple reasons why it maybe didn't work, but it could be the packets got screwed up. And so what it sent back really wasn't anything you could work with. Packet filtering router used as dual homed bastion host firewall. And you see you got your filtered data packets, those little pieces of your file going across. And you got your trusted network there.
Half the time, Tor files, source was rewritten. So you have to go to their alternative websites. You're just downloading a bunch of things that don't work. You have to go. It's like
Interesting.
updates. It's weird. It's super common. Half the time with my VM ISOs that I get for Windows 7, for instance, I'll end up downloading 5 of them, and none of them work, but they all say to go to these different websites to get it. It's an endless process.
Sample firewall rule and format. This is presumably what you can set up either in the software or hardware side. So if you're coming from this address, you go into this address, you allow FTP. You don't want to open up FTP to the world, but you open it up for a specific address. So if I'm sitting at home, assuming I don't have a different IP address each time, but if I have a specific IP address, they can open up that for just the one person. Of course, can you spoof it and change what your IP address says?
Yeah.
Yeah, but how easy is it for them to know what in the world your IP address was in the first place? Yeah, not if they know specifically, like they could hack in your computer, I suppose they could, but just generally, do you know what your IP address is at home?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I have to work a lot with my IP stuff. It's the whole Tor browser deal.
Oh.
You have to keep resetting your router.
Most people don't know it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they'll only give you even a set one when you have a website or there's other reasons for it. Interesting. I don't think I've ever run across anybody in my entire life who knew their IP address.
Yeah.
It's 10 or 100.3174357. How'd you know? Let's talk about your state table again. Tries to give you information about what's happening with the network. Application layer proxy firewall. A device capable of function both as a firewall and an application layer proxy server. Since proxy servers are often placed in unsecured areas of the network, DMZ, they are exposed to higher levels of risk from less trusted networks. Additional fire filtering routers can be implemented behind the proxy firewall, further protecting internal systems. Some places will have an external and they'll have an internal, so it'll be a dual protection. So if it gets through one, it won't get through the other. MAC layer firewalls, designed to operate as a media access control sublayer of a network's data link layer, make filtering decisions based on specific host computer's identity. We looked up our identity on our computers here, didn't we? Some of those we did. Remember the ipconfig/all and so forth. MAC addresses of specific host computers are linked to access control list entries that identify specific types of packets can be sent to each host, all of the traffic is blocked. You can spoof it and change your IP address, so you can make it appear like it's coming from somewhere else. MAC addresses, I believe, are more at the hardware level. Question is if you can spoof it. I don't know the answer to that. It's probably not as easy as IP. No, IP is a lot easier. Let's see.
IP is pretty
Yeah. I don't think a Mac spoofing.
There's 3 ways to do it.
Question is how easy it is, though. IP is, yeah.
Whenever I've been towards that, I usually take precaution.
However, many drivers allow the MAC address should be changed.
You can change it in your network.
You can change it what? In your network? So it's becoming just as easy as IP then, isn't it? Although MAC address spoofing is not illegal, its practice has caused controversy. 2012 indictment against Aaron Swartz, internet activist, who's accused of illegally accessing files from JSTOR digital library. Prosecutors claim that because he had spoofed his MAC address, it showed purposeful intent to commit criminal acts. So if he hadn't done it and he had illegally accessed the digital library, he would have been fine then, right? What it implies. It's like, well, I didn't know I shouldn't do that. Is it easier to do on a Mac?
Yeah.
Interesting. Talks about like a switch to prevent Mac spoofing. What is that? What was I referring to? Do we know? It says MAC address spoofing is limited to local broadcast domain, unlike IP address spoofing where senders spoof their IP address in order to cause a receiver to send a response elsewhere. In MAC address spoofing, the response is usually received by the spoofing party if switch is not configured to prevent MAC spoofing. I don't know. Hybrid firewalls combine elements of the other types of firewalls. I'm not going to go over all this, but we won't have time since we didn't have class on Monday. Here's firewall types and protocol models. Got the application level, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, physical. Firewall devices can be configured in several network connection architectures. Best configuration depends on 3 factors: objectives of the network, organization's ability to develop and implement architectures, and budget. Budget's kind of the big thing, right? You know, how much you're willing to pay for a certain device. You can have the best protection in the world, but if it costs you $1 million, does Cali have $1 million to protect their networks? No. I think there's only one time, and I'm sure there's a limit. There's only one time working in IT all those years that there was basically no budget. And that was when I worked at Coke. And I worked the end user computing, and they said, if you want to evaluate a software, go ahead and order it. And they didn't say we can't order if it's over 10,000 and so forth. We ordered cheap software, $400 or $500 for a shot. But for the most part, they have limits on it. Single bastion host, commonly referred to as sacrificial host, as it stands as a sole defender on the network perimeter. Usually implemented as a dual home host, which connects two network interface cards, NICs. The one is connected to an external network, one is connected to an internal network. Implementation into this architecture often makes use of network address translation, create another barrier to intrusion from external attackers. Screened host combines packet filtering router with a separate dedicated firewall, such as an application proxy server. Allows router to pre-screen packets to minimize the traffic load on internal proxy. Requires an external attack to compromise two separate systems before the attack can access internal data. Screen subnet architecture with DMZ is a dominant architecture used today. Commonly consists of two or more internal firewalls behind packet filtering router, with each protecting a trusted network. Connections from outside or untrusted network are routed through an external filtering router. So you got your outside, of the network. Connections from outside or untrusted network are routed into and out of routing firewall to separate the network segment known as a DMZ. And connections into trusted internal networks are allowed only from DMZ bastion host servers. Do you think every system set up this way? No. I've been told that the design of a proper network with all the security is a kind of a work of art. We used to have our network engineer here. He'd have his brother come in to specifically do the design, because his brother had numerous certifications in networking and so forth, and the network engineer we had didn't know how to do the design. He could do all the implementation and so forth, but his brother would come in. It's interesting. You wouldn't think it'd be an art, would you? But it is. Trying to plan it out. Do you think a lot of companies are the same? Could be, right? Local company here has one site. How about GKN? That's in Wellington. Does anybody know anything about GKN? They were talking how they have either a sister company or the mother company is located outside of this company. I think it's over in the UK, I believe. And they do just part of it here. What do they have to worry about?
Somebody tapped into the mother company in the UK.
Yeah, you got your external countries, right? So you got a lot of issues there. How do you connect to them? Is there a big network cable running across the ocean?
No, because a bunch of telegram lines.
Telegram lines, but no.
I'm pretty sure it's
There's no networking cables going across the ocean floor, is there? So how do they get here? Satellite? Does that open up other issues? Can anybody use a satellite? Could a terrorist organization use the satellites to? I don't know. I don't know how a satellite system works.
So a signal goes up the satellite. A satellite transfers it, then beams it down to the location that
Well, I understand the general principle, but can I go home and write my own little system, hardware / software that can use one of the satellites?
if you want to spend about 20 years in prison.
Without hacking in. I mean, do they open it up for everybody? I don't think so. I think very specific. So they probably charge these major companies that provide the connection between countries across the ocean. I'm guessing maybe it's completely free. Maybe I could go home and write my own little program. If it's completely free and there's no hacking into it, anybody can use it. I wouldn't go to prison, would I? Because that's like the air you breathe, It's just like
Unless
they
they really didn't like you.
didn't really like me. Yeah.
It's like him.
Cali, we have a site here, a site in Winfield, the main campus is Arc City. You got Mulvane, you got Wichita, Butler. They have numerous sites. Each one has their own issues, don't they? So, yeah, it'd be nice to think that just one class and you could design any network, but it seems like everything is probably pretty different in anything major. Here it talks about the address ranges. Here's an example of a dual-homed Bastion host firewall. You got your untrusted network. You got your external non-filtering router. Then you got your dual-home Bastion host firewall, providing your network translations. Then your network. Here's a screened host architecture. So you got your getting your untrusted network over here. You got your application layer firewall, Proxy. You ever hear of a proxy server? Packet filtering firewall, and then your trusted network. We'll go into a lot more of this in future. Screen subnet DMZ. Notice here in the DMZ we have servers, don't we? So it isn't just all hardware based or hardware/software based. We actually got a network, server network there. And external filtering router, outbound data, internal filtering router. So you got two routers. You got an external one, you got an internal one. And then you have your DMZ zone up here. Virus comes in, hits your server hard. Where has it actually infected? In theory, if it hasn't got very far, it's right up here, right? Has that infected any of your databases, your students, your employees? No, not at this point, because this is our DMZ zone, right? So the server allows you to do a lot of software options, and so forth. And so it never even hits our network. Here's an example network configuration. You got your proxy server. Here's my IP address. Can you go home and with this access me?
Not you specifically, not the computer.
You could probably do it now, yeah, because you're on the server, aren't you? This is specific to this. This is where it's controlling your IP address. This isn't one you can access forever. Typically at home, you don't got your own IP address. The exceptions to that is if you're like with Cox and you're going to run your own web server out of your home, you have to have a static IP address. And then the mapping is done to where somebody goes www. whatever, it knows where that IP address is. A lot of your Cox and so forth will dynamically give you IP addresses. So each time you log in, you got a different one. But it's based upon their own internal structure.
So basically, every time I go back and forth between here and Winfield or City, I get a new IP address.
Right. Now, it used to be, I'm not sure if Kali still does this. For a while, Kali was using static, but they didn't change. But if you use static, you have to map it. Okay, this IP address is David. This IP address is John. This IP address is Samantha. Yeah, or did you say Samantha?
It's expensive.
Oh, expensive. My hearing's bad. Yeah, that's expensive from a tracking standpoint, right? Keeping track of it. And so yeah, dynamic is a lot easier. It's there's no tracking. There's no database kept track of it. Is it harder to find out who need to go to if they're going someplace bad?
I think that's why we have the logs.
Logs, and what does the logs contain?
You plug in your IP address and call your MAC.
Yeah, your MAC. If you got your MAC address, and assuming the person isn't smart enough to change your MAC address on their computer, or your system doesn't allow them to do that, then yeah, you can track it via that way. So it's just a different way of doing it. So yeah, when you see these 10 dot whatevers, they're not what you think. What is that? Who is? I think. I don't know if that's on command prompt or not. Where am I? Who is Cali.edu? See if that works. It doesn't. But you can see in a lot of cases, unless they got it hidden, you can see the IP address of your website. There's one time at IFR they had screwed up. Who were hosting through it screwed up our domain name. You could still type in the IP address, go directly to it, but you couldn't type in like www.ifrsys.com and go there. By the way, how do you think I go to my IP address for my own website? Do you think I use mathheals.com? I use the IP address because that's the way it's set up. It's meant to, put in an IP address. So. See, when selecting the firewall, consider the following factors: which type of firewall technology offers the right balance between protection and cost for the needs of the organization, what features are included in the base price, what features are available at extra cost. Again, goes back to cost. How easy to set up and configure the firewall. Why do people like Cisco? It's completely, well, I shouldn't say completely, but a lot of their solutions are hardware based. They come pre-configured, so you don't have to have a lot of knowledge to get it up and running. Somebody made a comment as when I talked about offering CCNA classes here. They said, well, Cisco is pretty much just plug it in and it works. Kind of like Mac, right? Do you have to do a lot of configuration on Macs? No. Click, no, I don't want to enable Siri. No, I don't want to set up my touch. And it works. Now, how about Windows? Does that take more configuration, more work?
Yeah.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. So, again, when you ask these questions, does your organization have staff on hand or trained to configure the firewall? Do you have somebody that's Cisco certified? If you do need to make changes. Or to hire additional employees be required. Organization must provide for the initial configuration, ongoing management of firewalls. Each firewall device must have its own set of configuration rules regulating its actions. Firewall policy configuration is usually complex and difficult, so you got to know what you're doing. Configuring firewall policies is both an art and a science. This is what I was talking about. When you're trying to protect your network in general, it's not here step 1, step 2, step 3. There's an art to it. When security rules conflict with the performance of business, security often loses. If I need access to something and you're not allowing me to do it, I can't do my job, right? So if I can't do my job, then it's no good. So that's why I say security loses. Best practices for firewalls. All traffic from the trusted network is allowed out. What's that mean? The what?
I didn't read the question.
Best practices. All traffic from the trusted network is allowed out. Who's a trusted network? Cali, right? Yeah. So if you're Cali, I got you hired, or if you're a student, I suppose. Though student, I'm not sure if it would fit into that category, but if I got you hired, then I trust you, right? So anything you're doing internally, you can the network the traffic that's going out is allowed. Does that make sense? Firewall device is never directly accessed from public network. What's that mean? If I'm at home, should I be able to access the firewall device directly? Configure it? That'd be bad.
The administrator
Even an administrator, you don't want that. You don't want to be able to log in from home and work with the firewall. Because if they can do it from home, what could somebody else do?
Do it from home.
Do it from home, yeah. So yeah, you got a big difference between your public network and your private network.
maybe in your home network. Like you could access the
No, they just mean any. Oh, your home network.
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't even want that. I wouldn't want to be able to from here. I wouldn't want to be able to configure my all my options from home.
Yeah. That's
That just opens up so many holes.
Yeah.
Only person who should be able to configure your own routers at home should be somebody that's internal to that network. So, simple mail transport protocol (SMTP) data are allowed to pass through firewall. Why is that important? So you can receive.
Yeah.
It's kind of obvious. Internet Control Message Protocol, ICMP data are denied. I'm not sure about that one. Telnet, access to internal servers should be blocked. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
Telnet's the worst thing in the world. I love Telnet, but it's the worst thing in the world. And you notice they had it listed as one of the items, right? So it's when web services are offered outside the firewall, HTTP traffic should be blocked from reaching internal networks. I'm not sure about that, but if you got your web server sitting outside your firewall, it's not part of your internal network. Should people coming in the HTTP traffic to that web server, should they be able to access things on your internal network? Best case is no. But if your website pulls information from a database, where might that database be hosted? Offsite would be fantastic, but it might be hosted internally, right? Which case you're opening up, for them to access that. So.
Like at the high school, they have a class. They had to rearrange the classrooms, and so there's a full stage, basically where all the really smart kids go.
Mm-hmm.
And in the room right next to it, like there's a little closet in that room, and it has a server in it. Okay, teacher's like, this is gonna be a bad idea.
Yeah, sometimes the design of things is not thought out. All data that are not verifiably authentic should be denied. If you can't verify that it's a good source where it's coming from, you should send it back. Say, hey, you're denied. Firewall rules. Firewalls operate by examining data packets and performing comparison with predetermined logic rules. Because when you got data coming in, that's all you have is these little streams of data, isn't it? And you could examine the actual data itself, but what is examined? The header information, all that information we saw at the top there. So that's mostly what it goes off of. Logic's based on a set of guidelines, most commonly referred to as firewall rules, rule-based, or firewall logic. Most firewalls use packet header information to determine whether a specific packet should be allowed or denied. So if you want to be able to allow it in, what do you have to manipulate if you're a hacker? The packet header. Modify the packet header information. If you modify that, you can appear like it's legitimate what's coming in theory, right? There's different ways to protect a network from that. It's not as easy as somebody just going in and modifying a packet header and you get in type of deal. There's two-way verifications that are done. It's kind of like I send the information from this IP address. The place that's receiving it then sends back to me, says, "Hey, did you send this?" "Yeah, I sent that." And then say, "Okay," and then it verifies, the packet header information, and so forth. If I change my IP address, just for sending purposes, they come back and they ask for verification. Who are they sending it to?
The
Not the
organization.
Right, and that machine saying, "Hey, I never sent a packet," and so it's denied. So there's checks for all that.
Could you manipulate what gets sent back to?
No, because it's based upon your IP address. Now, if you're able to spoof that and stay signed on, I suppose, with that IP address, then you could. So, kind of like if you did have a static, if I knew the IP address of the president of the college, could I make it look like things are coming from the president of the college? Yeah. Static isn't great. And besides just the management headaches, it's just a real issue there. I can't even remember why we used static addresses to initially, to be honest.
Well, the reason they don't use static is because when they turn IP address, like IPv4, they'll run out very quickly.
Right.
So
if you have
scheduled, expires, set to expire after a certain amount of time, here's 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That gave you an IP address.
Right. How do you know that? You just talk to IT people?
No, it's like you brought that up, about changing to my IP. I was looking up 5 minutes beforehand.
I mean, how do you know 3 hour time frame?
Because I checked on my computer.
Oh, so it says 3 when it expires?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had you search for ports. Remember that assignment?
Yes.
Again, some ports should be blocked. If you have configuring a network or even analyzing whether an organization is set up security-wise, you shouldn't see port 23 opened up. If it is, and then you say, "We got an issue. We need to shut this down," and they shut it down at IFR, and immediately, who got affected? I did. It's just like I was walking my butt over to the network. People said, "What's going on?" I can't tell net, and it's like, "Oh well, we blocked that. You can't do that anymore." It's like, well, how can I do my job? And they told me use there's a secure utility to do kind of the same type of thing. I can't remember the name of it now. SSH? No.
I only use
Secure utility for Telnet. Putty. Is an SSH. They had me use Putty, and it communicated through SSH and not through the Telnet. But first one, Putty. Now, if you're using Putty to go through Telnet, that's probably still an issue. Well, we're out of time, so I'll go ahead and stop there, and you can read the rest of it yourself. And I'll put the test out there. This will be the last test I put out there that has unlimited attempts. So that was for us to get used to it. Believe it or not, with unlimited attempts, what should everybody have with a multiple choice test? Should have 100, right?
What's gonna be the limit?
Some people don't.
What's gonna be the limit?
I'll set it to 2.
Okay, good.
One will give you an option to kind of write it down and so forth. But when you got 4 attempts and there's 4 multiple choice, if you can't get 100 on it, then yeah.